Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Conversations with Carrie. It is my distinct honor to welcome today Miss Suzanne Beadle. Miss Suzanne Beadle is a senior lecturer in arts management and humanities at the Edna Manley College of Visual and Performing Arts in Kingston, Jamaica. An accomplished artist scholar, she is also a director, playwright, actress, singer, writer, and is founder, CEO, and creative director of the faith-based production company Soul Art by Suzanne. Her work is uniquely bridges creative expression, education, ministry, and social advocacy. Suzanne holds a Master's of Arts in Creative Arts with distinction from the University of the West Indies in Cave Hill and is completing a Master of Science in Counseling at the University of the West Indies, Mona. Reflecting her growing integration of trauma-informed practice into her artistic and academic work, her research interests includes dysfunctional parenting, intergenerational trauma, narrative healing, and the psychosocial impact of family systems within the Caribbean context. Suzanne's debut commercial production, 70 times 7, The Real Truth, a Jamaican family drama, explores forgiveness and reconciliation, received 2 Actor Boy Award nominations, and was followed by another original production, Yours Truly. She has also received an Actor Boy Award nomination for Best Director for her co-direction of To the Finish. As a performer, she has appeared in notable productions including Dreamgirls, Thicker Than Water, The Trial of Governor Al, Junkunu, Jamboree, and Soji. Her creative works have taken her beyond the shores of Jamaica, across the Caribbean, and further afield to the USA, England, and Sweden, and also include works in film, television, radio, and music. If you out and talk, Soul Art webinar series provides a safe space for women to discuss and share about trauma while providing support, community, and care. Suzanne is also the host of a podcast, Soul Talk, which is in its 3rd season and has recently published her 2nd and 3rd books, A Million Miracles, One Woman's Journey Through Ordinary Days, and An Extraordinary God, and also 7 Days of Grace, a week of praise and promise. Beyond the creative arts, Suzanne is the founder of the Shalom Foundation, Finding Forever Families, which advocates for adoption and foster care in Jamaica. Suzanne is a longstanding adjudicator and workshop facilitator for the JCDC Festival of the Performing Arts and actively mentors emerging creatives. She is an ordained pastor who also serves as a worship pastor and leads the creative arts ministry at Family Word and Worship Church. Through scholarship, storytelling, and social engagement, Suzanne is committed to elevating Caribbean voices and fostering healing through the arts. Suzanne, such an honor to welcome you today to Conversations with Carrie.
Thank you so much for having me, Kerry. That sounded like a whole lot, but yeah, I'm so grateful to be here.
Yes, it is a lot, and it is significant because, as the last part of the introduction outlines, beyond the creative arts, you're also a pastor, you are a facilitator, and you use arts to foster uh, mental health, to put it in a nutshell. Now, Miss Suzanne, you have to
Yes,
speak out.
ma'am.
I'm seeing your expressions, but we're going to ask you to speak those expressions because, the camera will capture
Yes,
you then.
absolutely.
Miss Suzanne,
Yes.
you were a featured speaker at the 2026 Global Healthcare Conference,
Yes.
and you spoke on a topic called A Mother's Love with a question mark.
Yes.
Before we get into the questions, I need people to understand that this was the first presentation of the conference,
Boy,
and people were
yes, nerve
crying.
wracking. Wow. Yeah.
There a lot of healing took place as a result of this presentation. Now let us talk about A Mother's Love question mark.
Question mark. All right. So the full topic of the research that this paper was based on is a mother's love, question mark, dysfunctional mothering in the Caribbean and its impact on adult offspring, ending the cycle of accepted maternal abuse. So the question mark is there to to make it clear that we're not really talking about functional mother-child relationships, but dysfunctional relationships, how it impacts persons, how they then become adults, and how it impacts their walk through life as adults, sometimes as parents themselves, and also how can we end the cycle of accepted maternal abuse.
Mhm. Okay, so we can establish that even the topic is heavy. My first
Correct.
question to you, Miss Suzanne,
Yes.
is what brought you to this topic?
All right. So I was in Barbados doing my master's in creative arts. And it was, how do you say, a condensed thesis with a creative project attached to it. So as we were there exploring, what do I want to talk about? What do I want to research? One of my supervisors encouraged us to dig deep and come up with a topic that is personal to us, and not just personal but deeply personal. And so I thought about all the different things that I could explore, and I thought it was safe to look at the dysfunction within my childhood, because I was in
Mhm.
Barbados, I wasn't in Kingston, I wasn't around my family, so I could kind of distance myself from the reality as I
Uh-huh.
explored what happened. And so I ended up on motherhood, ended up on the relationship with my mother, and it just developed from there.
Okay. So you mentioned in your response that you thought it would be safe. Was it safe?
Yes, not at all, because COVID came. And I ended up wrapping up my research in Jamaica. And so
Uh-huh.
when I came back home, I went down to my dad's house and I was wrapping up my research, the academic side, the formal paper at
Yeah.
home in Mandeville. And he came and said, "What are you writing about?" And I was like, "Okay, the plan was never to have this conversation with you." But because I was there, I had to talk to him, talk to my stepmom, and had some very difficult conversations that were not a part of the plan, but they were very
Yeah.
useful and, a part of the process, really, because healing sometimes takes you through some painful moments,
Yeah.
but you have to go through them in order to come out on the other end. So I
That's
thought it would have been, you know, okay because I was so far away, but that's not how it ended up at all.
all right. So, can you share with me, because you speak about wanting it to be safe. We recognize that now, even before the end of your research, you ended up having challenging conversations with your dad. But
Right.
the Jamaican culture is a culture that doesn't speak very much about what happens in the home. You don't
Correct.
air your dirty laundry. So even if you're having certain emotions, we are told to put it aside and to
Yes.
go along to get along.
Yeah.
So so I'm interested to know, how did the conversations with your family, um did it affect your research in any way?
You know what? It absolutely did. All right. So, yes, in the Jamaican context, and I dare say the Caribbean context, where,
Yeah.
we put out a brave front, air our dirty laundry. But even more so than that, within the Caribbean context, mothers are revered. So we're allowed to talk bad
Yes.
about fathers. We're allowed to talk about what this papa and deadbeat dad and all of those things, but we're not allowed to say anything bad about mothers because the fact that they carried you for 9 months and gave birth, they are akin to a demigod. They walk on water almost. And so the idea of publicly speaking negatively about a mother or a mother figure is not a
Hmm.
Caribbean thing. And so
Yeah.
the conversations were challenging, but I'll tell you this. There are two things that I remembered that my dad said to me. One, and one in particular, you asked about, did it impact my research? He said to me, all the things that have happened in the past have already happened. You can't change them, but you can control what happens in your future. You can decide who you want to become. And even though a lot of times we hear from, we spoke about breaking cycles of abuse, and we hear things like generational trauma and so on. And a lot of parents will say, I did not have a good example to follow. I had nobody to teach me how to parent. But the fact that you had a negative example can say to you, okay, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to be that. And so when he said to me, you have the power to determine what your future looks like, you don't have to be stuck in the past, it
Hmm.
shaped the end of my creative project for my research. I actually
Oh,
ended the creative project with a song by Junior Tucker called I'm Determined, which is exactly
oh,
what he was saying to me, because the song says I'm determined to fulfill my destiny. And just before that, I used Queen Africa's Lioness on the Rise. So it changed the shape of the research, of the creative project coming out of the research, to a more uplifting and positive end. Because no matter
right.
what has happened, when you go through the process of doing the work and coming to healing, you can then
Mhm.
determine what your future looks like. It doesn't have to remain an unbroken cycle. So yes, the conversations did impact the final product.
Okay, so that's actually very good to know. Okay, so going back to the scientific research methodology, tell me about like your data collection, or what are some of the
Right.
interesting things that you found?
Correct. Okay, so you would be surprised how many people go through these kinds of situations. So it started off being also autoethnographic in nature. And so my intention was, my creative project was a compilation of short stories and poetry. And my intention was to go through the research, create these creative works, and
Mhm.
chronicle my own response to going through this process. So it was originally intended to be completely autobiographical, not autobiographical, autoethnographic.
Yeah.
Um, my siblings, with whom I share a mother, were involved in journeying through this process with me. And so they became a kind of ethnographic community within which I immersed myself. So I got to observe them respond to my journey because they had the
Okay.
same life experience that I did. And so I also got pieces of creative work from them as a part of the project. And I was able to use their responses and their memories and their reactions to what I was going through as data.
Right.
Both of them, they responded in different ways. We all had the same childhood, but each of us has a different response. And so those kinds of, how does my sister parent her children, how does my brother navigate relationships, all of those things became data for me. And then further afield, there are so many persons within the Caribbean context that I was able to interview and dialogue with, and just really jump on a Zoom and just talk and
Right.
gather their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, and compare and contrast with other persons. And what are some of the ways in which, as adults navigating life, they have been impacted. So it was a real mixture of my own story, immersing myself with among my siblings, and then going further afield and gathering data from individuals. So there was no kind of like broad brush questionnaire being given out to 100 people. It was very
Okay.
specific persons who had very specific experiences and real life journeys, shared those and shared their thoughts and their feelings and how they have now become adults and have now become parents, and what they're doing to break the cycle of maternal abuse and maternal dysfunction in their own lives and therefore the lives of their children.
Yes. Okay. So, um, you spoke about your siblings being a part of your research through observations and seeing how they're responding now with their own lives. So, when you were growing up, did you feel like your mother loved one child more than the other?
Boy. Oh my goodness, Kerry. Okay. Um, that's a very difficult question to answer. It's a very difficult question to answer because she treated each of us differently. And
Okay.
as children, we did not recognize the dysfunction. Our
Okay.
understanding of the dysfunction came about as adults. And
Okay.
so we oh my goodness, we experienced, well, let me rephrase that. My understanding of the experiences and the dysfunction came about as an adult. My siblings have other experiences.
Mhm.
And I can't say that she loved one child more than the other because my mother is arguably incapable of loving her children. So there's
Mhm.
no barometer of how she loves each of us. There is how the dysfunction manifested in each of our lives. There is the
Okay.
kind of interaction and social interaction that she has with each of us. But to say
Mhm.
she loved him better than she loved her, it's kind of difficult to navigate based on the circumstances.
Okay. All right. So now just going further afield with those other persons that you were able to communicate with, was there an overarching theme regarding um, number one, a mother's love, and number two, the manifestations in adults?
Yeah.
Prefer to
Um,
ask those questions separately. So,
yes. Yeah.
yeah.
So the overarching theme as it relates to a mother's love is the expectation of love from a mother. You
Mhm.
hear it all the time. There's no love like a mother's love, the kind of love that a mother has for her child. So there is this expectation that the fact that you gave birth to a child
Mhm.
automatically results in love for that child. That's an expectation across the board, which feeds into the second half of the question because it is that expectation that causes the dysfunction to impact so deeply. It is that
Uh,
expectation that allows for the dysfunction to be so long lasting
mhm.
because, and let me give you, I think you know this about me, Kerry. I speak in anecdotes. I always have these little stories and experiences to share. But
Yes.
when I decided to do this research, I reached out to a friend of mine because the first time I met him, we were at a workshop. I took some students to a workshop. He was the workshop presenter. And it was around about getting ready for Mother's Day. So, every Jamaican artist have a song about their mother. And so all of these songs were playing and people were talking about the different events for Mother's Day. And this person stood up very quietly saying to himself, but what about those of us for whom the mother relationship is not a positive one? And when
Mm-hmm.
he said it, and this is somebody older than me, and when he
Yeah.
said it, I thought, yes, what about us? And so when I decided to do this research, I reached out to him to
Mhm.
say, would you share your thoughts? What are your experiences? And he sent me his master's thesis, which in part also spoke about the dysfunctional mothering that he went through. And it is interesting that as a big man with grown grandchildren, he
Yeah.
still suffers from the impact of the mother-son dysfunction. And his was interesting because it was two dysfunctional relationships, and a physically absent mother and an
Uh-huh.
abusive mother figure. So his
Mm.
birth mother was not around, and the person who raised him was very, very severely physically and verbally abusive. And so he had a kind of double whammy of dysfunctional mothering. And he and I often have this debate because whenever I talk about my experiences, and he knows my mother, and let me tell you something, my mother is the nicest person on the face of the earth, right? One, let me just
Yes.
make that clear. She's one of the
Yeah.
nicest people you'll ever meet, and her three children love her dearly. Let me make that clear. So this is not about
Yes.
bashing mothers or even bashing my mother. But very often when he hears me talking about how, because I vent to him because I know he understands, and how it impacts me, he often says to me, but at least you had your mother. And
Mm.
I would respond with, so you think not having your mother around physically is worse than having a mother who can't love you? And there's always that debate. There's always that
Yes.
debate about the physical absence versus the emotional absence, and which one is worse. And the truth is, neither of them is worse. It's a different kind of hurt and a different kind of dysfunction. But because of the expectation of a mother's love, which
Yeah.
in my research, we established that the idea that a mother's love is automatic is a fallacy. It's
Okay.
not automatic. You don't give birth and automatically love the child, or else there'll be no postpartum depression, right? You
Ah,
don't give birth and automatically support your child. You don't give birth and automatically bend over backwards and go out of your way to ensure your child is okay. It's not an automatic thing. You have mothers who have personality disorders. You have mothers who are psychopaths and sociopaths. You have mothers who are narcissistic. You have mothers who are dysfunctional in many ways. And you have mothers who just, when you have a child who, for example, gives birth at the age of 12,
mm,
that's a traumatic experience. You can't expect, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you can't expect an automatic love and maternal concern for that child when the arrival of the child was trauma for you. If a woman
yeah.
is assaulted and there's a pregnancy that results, you gonna expect a mother's love? What if I remember when I was growing up in a Kerry, I had a friend, our age group. So my dad was a theater practitioner. So we're always at the
Yeah.
theater. So, all the theater kids became friends. All the kids of the people who were on stage became friends. And there was this lady who lived close to us, and her kids were our age. And her son was a result of marital assault. Trying to
Mm.
be very delicate in what I say. And he is a splitting image of his father.
Oh
And she
Lord.
could not love her son. She couldn't love her son. She
Oh
she
wow.
tried. She couldn't. She could not.
Mm.
And so this idea that because you carried a child for 7, 8, 9 months and gave birth means that you automatically love that child is a fallacy. And the expectation of that love is in part what causes the hurt to run so deep,
Mm-hmm.
because it is an expectation that you have, and you have people clinging to these mothers who don't love them, don't want them, and they still cling to them. This is why you have children who are adopted, and adopted by beautiful families, and they have this yearning for that mother, you know? And when
Yeah.
that mother rejects them and doesn't want to get to know them, it is a kind of deep, deep hurt, and it doesn't have anything to do with the person who raised them. They still love that person, but there's this yearning, and it's because of this expectation that your mother must love you. And if your mother doesn't love you, it must mean that there's something wrong, or maybe you did something wrong, or whatever. So I would say that the common thread throughout all of the persons with whom I spoke was this expectation of love from a mother, which led to this deep, deep, deep brokenness and hurt when that love is not manifesting in the way that you expect it to. And it is
So,
way more common than you think. It's way more common than you think. That's why I use the subtitle "Ending Cycle of Accepted Maternal Abuse," because this kind of dysfunctional mothering is accepted in the Caribbean. It's accepted in Jamaica. You are expected to love and respect and honor your mother in spite of whatever, because she gave birth to you.
yes. So what about the reverse? Was there, you notice that all my interview questions are off the table now. It's like, go away. These questions
Right?
are not working out.
Which is why I was like, whatever.
Yeah, this conversation is so great. So, um, did you notice anything about the reverse, the expectation of the child towards the mother? Okay, so the child expects, or society expects, that a mother's love is automatic.
Right.
Does society also expect the love of the child to be automatic towards the parent?
I'll tell you what society expects. Society expects you to honor your father and your mother. Society
Yes.
expects you to take care. Society expects you to be the pension for your parents. So when
Mm-hmm.
you have a child, you should feel relaxed about your future because your child will take care of you. It is an expectation of society. And if you do not, no matter how dysfunctional your childhood may have been,
Mm-hmm.
you are frowned upon if you do not take care of your mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really parents, but more so the mother. So
Yeah.
yes, society expects that you will forgive, that you will understand, that you will be the bigger person and take care of your parents, take care of your mother. And it's very interesting because, to use myself and my siblings as an example, we are now currently taking care of our mother
Yeah.
and both our parents in as they
Yeah.
become elderly. And we have had to navigate healing on our own without the input from our mother. Without her participation, we have had to. And I always say that in spite of everything, she managed to raise three fairly successful, well functioning children, right? But we have
Yes.
had to navigate our own healing without her participation to get to the point where we are not resentful of the expectation of taking care of her. Because as I said before, this is not bashing mothers. This is not expressing a lack of love. We love our mother dearly, you know?
Yes.
And so yes, there is that expectation as well that, yeah, but it's your mother. Yeah, but is
Yeah.
she bringing come here? Yeah, but it's your mother, you know? As we were talking now, I remember this is a satirical skit that I saw online where this woman was claiming to want to sue her parents because she didn't give them consent to have been born, and she was not enjoying her life, so she wanted to sue them, and it was a joke. But the truth is, we don't owe a debt of anything, but there is an expectation within the Caribbean context. Perhaps it's an Afrocentric retention that mothers are taken care of by children.
So I'm a little bit curious though. Uh, After experiencing dysfunctional parenting, what impact did your research find that this has on an adult? And I'm particularly thinking about adults in terms of navigating relationships and even relationship with their own children.
Right. It's interesting that you asked that question because one of the things that I find very interesting about my siblings and I is that we navigate relationships in so many in such diverse ways. All dysfunctional, right? And I'm using the word dysfunctional loosely here, but our ability to trust, for example,
Mhm.
has been severely compromised. Um, our ability to navigate in functional ways, love relationships was severely compromised. I think it's a miracle that my siblings have stable marriage. Um, it's there's so many deep seated. There are issues having to do with self esteem, for example, because as I said, the mother's love is an expectation, and that love manifests itself in pouring into your child, building up your child's self-esteem, supporting your child, being your child's biggest cheerleader. And so when that is absent, you find that there are issues having to do with self-esteem, identity. If my mother cannot love me, you know that the people always saying this child has a face that only a mother could love. Your
Yeah.
mother love you regardless of whatever you do, right? You see lines
Yeah.
and lines of mothers lining up at the jails to look for their sons. When police are come look for them son and them know so them son a criminal, them protect and hide them son. Your mother supposed to can love you through anything. So when that love is absent, you wonder, who am I? What is this about me that causes this absence? You know? Um, can other mentor figures really love me? Can I trust an aunt or a boss or a teacher or a pastor? Because if my mother cannot love me, why would I then trust somebody else? Can I even believe in a relationship with God? Because God is a parent figure. And if my understanding of parenting is dysfunctional in this way, can I embrace the idea of a God who is a parent figure? So it manifests in so many ways. But because as Caribbean people, we suck it up and make it happen and we live our lives and we work hard and we are successful, you look at us and you see successful human beings walking around with so many there's this thing in counseling called the mother wound. So
Mhm.
many people walking around with mother wounds, and you would never know because we are powerful, strong, creative, hardworking Black people, and we make it happen, and we turn around and take care of our parents.
Yeah. Okay. So, how, okay, did your research identify any particular traits that uh, are specific to dysfunctional love versus authentic,
Yeah.
expected love?
One of the challenges I had, my supervisor and I had this fight because he wanted me to include mental health. He wanted me to include the term mentally ill mothers, right, in the research topic. And I felt it was giving them an excuse because if you say they're mentally unwell, then it's not their fault. And that was it was problematic for me. But many of the mothers that I came across in my research do have this personality disorders. They
Okay.
have mental health dysfunctions. I spoke about narcissism before, sociopathology, psychopathology. There are other kinds of borderline personality disorder, other kinds of personality disorders.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult area to navigate
Mhm.
because, as I said before, I feel like I'm giving you an excuse, right?
Mm.
If I
Yeah.
say mentally unwell mothers, then but they're sick, so why you expect? But they're sick, so they can't be held accountable. But they're sick, so and so it was really a challenge for me to label these women as anything. But to answer your question, many, many, many of them had diagnosed something that would
Yeah.
fall under the umbrella of a mental health condition, not necessarily an illness, a personality disorder, you know, but not necessarily something that is impulse driven, which to
Mm.
me means that they could make other choices,
Yeah.
which is why I was reluctant to label it as mentally ill.
Mental health. Right.
Yes. But yeah, there's an underlying thread of there's also, Kerry, an underlying thread of maternal abuse in their lives. Right?
Okay.
So remember we spoke about the cycle. So there's
Right.
there's there's an underlying thread of maternal abuse or dysfunction or absence in their lives as well. And so they perpetuated the same kind of dysfunction.
Okay. So when I was growing up, well, my mother was a teacher.
Yeah,
And when I was growing up, I think there was a point in my life when I had great resentment towards her because she was constantly writing lesson plans or grading papers or doing something when I wanted her attention.
right,
And I think I held on to it for a very long time. And then after I migrated, there was this trend, okay, where she would enter the US and she would come and see me, then she would go and see her siblings. And one
right,
year she went and saw her siblings before she came to see me, and I did not realize. Listen, those old resentment came back so strongly. I had to take a hold of
right,
myself. So I did. I think I lashed out. I'm an adult, you know. I'm in my
right,
20s. And I'm like, you're putting other people before me. And this is the one time she's ever done it the opposite, where she goes to see her
went to them.
siblings first before coming to me. And I remember after she came to visit, then I apologized. And I think I apologized to her like a couple of times because I didn't realize what was in me where that was concerned. I kind of had to like grow myself up, for
Right,
lack of a better word. So um share some of your experiences that you've had or some of the experiences that other persons may have shared with you, because I actually wanted to share this with you earlier when I first came across a mother's love and the context, because uh, my mother was not mentally ill, and she was very present and she paid a lot of attention. But is there anything to suggest that like the demands of a child like me could actually impact the outcome or the feeling of a child towards their mother? I'm not even
right.
sure the question I'm
So
asking
yeah,
right now.
and I understand what you're saying. So I wanna respond in this way. So the love the expectation of a
Hmm.
mother's love is
Yeah.
so deep
Yes.
that the actions of a mother will impact a child deeply, be it positive or negative, will impact a child deeply, right? The actions of a mother will always have a deep seated impact on the child, whether it's good or bad, positive or negative. And so a mother who is doing her thing
Hmm.
and one day she can't do it and the child is disappointed is not what we're talking about in my research, right?
Okay.
A mother who goes away to work hard and provide for her family, and so her child is left neglected in terms of the definition of neglect, but the mother is present, sending money, looking after the child, is not what we're talking about. We're talking about abuse. We're talking about um, verbal, physical. We're talking about mothers that send their children out to find men to bring money
mm,
home. We're talking about mothers who, you know, um, would put their child in the light. I remember one day I was working, I was going to work, and it was a fortnight Friday. So payday for lots of men, and the mothers of their children are there. And there was this man, I was working in Newport West, and a man was irate. I don't know what the woman had done. If anything, I wasn't there before this moment, but he was very irate. And
mm.
the woman had a child holding. The child could have been maybe 1.5. And the man took up a stone to throw at the woman, and she held the child in front of her. That is who I'm talking about in my research, right? No, some people might say, well, she knew that the man would not have hurt the child, that's why she did it. But most mothers would want to protect their child and put the child behind them. So I'm not talking about children being disappointed by decisions their mother made. I'm talking about real dysfunction.
Mm,
Um, I remember one Mother's Day, my brother, who is a minister, and at the time, the church that he was ministering at, he was in charge of the men's ministry, and so they were planning Mother's Day activities. He was living outside of Jamaica at the time, planning Mother's Day activities, picking the songs to be performed for the mothers in the church. The men would come to him and say, I don't know what to do for my wife for Mother's Day, give me some suggestions, and he would help them plan everything. My mother did not cross his mind. Not because he thought of her and decided to ignore her. His mind has so blocked her out because of the trauma that he went through as a child that we
mhm.
have to remind him about her. And he loves her,
Yes.
But we have to remind him. We have to say, remember Mother's Day is coming up. Remember Mommy's birthday is coming up. And whenever we talk about these experiences, if I have a conversation with my brother now about something we went through as a child, he will not remember. And if I
Mm,
talk to him about it next month, it will be like he's hearing it for the first time again, because his mind has so erased her as a protective
mm,
mechanism for him as a young boy, you know? And we've lived in very, very dangerous circumstances. We've lived in situations where our mother will I'm trying to be delicate in how I say all of these things, but our mother will, for example, do something untoward and then blame one of us so that we can get in trouble instead of her. And I'm not talking about, like talking bad about people. I'm talking about real situations.
yeah.
I've heard stories about mothers so my friend who I alluded to earlier, his mother was raised by her sister, and her sister
Okay.
was severely abusive to her. Severely
Okay.
abusive to her. And when she had her children, she went and left them with the same sister, knowing how abusive the sister is. And so they all
Oh,
went through the abuse. We're talking about people who just starve their children, don't feed their children.
mm,
Children have had to run away, children have had to be rescued. There's one particular person I spoke with who doesn't know who his father is. And his
mm.
mother knows who his father is. And from all of his young life, she told him his father was somebody else. And
Oh,
then when she had to acknowledge that that was not his father, she to this day refuses to tell him who his father is. And so he lost the surname of the person who raised him, or who he thought was his father, and he
uh-huh.
has nothing to replace it with. And now he has a family, and he's like, what do I call my family?
But yeah.
You know?
Ah.
Um, yeah, so we're talking about decisions that are made that serve you but not your children, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and real dysfunction, not just disappointment, you
Mm.
know, putting your child in danger consistently. sometimes at your own hand, you know,
Yeah.
and coming from a mother lands in a different way. Your mother is supposed to be your safe space. So when your
Yeah.
safe space becomes a place of danger, where do you then go? It lands in a completely different way. And you look around you and you see, like in my experience, for example, I have 6 siblings. There are 7 of us that my father has, and there are
Yeah.
4 mothers. And we see different kinds of mothering from other mothers in our own immediate family,
Right. Right.
and we see mothers pouring into their children, and we are looking at them like, okay, oh, wow, what do you have to complain about, kind of thing. So yes, the disappointment that comes from a mother's actions will hit hard, but this is a different level of dysfunction that we're talking about, because
Yeah.
yeah, you're going to be upset because your mother don't give you everything you want. That's You will be, because it's your mother and you want
Yeah.
her for this, you know so yeah, it's
Yeah.
a different level of dysfunction. And one of the things I hope that my research or me talking about this will do is to create spaces for conversations to happen. I'm not looking for any
Yeah.
big miracle. I'm looking for acknowledgement and
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that not everybody could write a Mama You Alone song, or
Yeah.
not everybody could write a Thank You Mama song. Acknowledge
Right.
it, and let's have honest conversations. Create safe spaces where people can
Right.
feel heard and feel empowered to speak and not feel judged. Uh, for the real trauma and hurt that they've gone through.
Yeah. I have to ask this question. I know that you looked at this research from a Jamaican slash Caribbean perspective, but did your research uncover any potential cultural or socioeconomic variations in how a mother's love is expressed for their children?
You know, I interviewed a young lady, Jamaican young lady. She lives in England now,
Yeah,
and she sent me a radio drama story, which was based on a true story
yeah,
of a white upper middle class family coming out of England,
mm,
and the daughter was being her identity was stolen, and
mm,
her life was upended,
mm,
right? Stole her identity, went into all of her accounts, stole her money. Like, I mean, she couldn't, she lost her job. It just upended her life.
yeah,
And it turned out that her mother was the one doing it. This is a white, upper middle class British family. Her mother was the one doing it. And even though her mother has been tried, proven, and incarcerated for it, she still refuses to acknowledge that she did it. So no, dysfunctional mothering doesn't belong to a particular race or socio economic demographic at all. At all. Um, it might have a different mask,
mm,
but underneath the different masks is the same. You know,
right,
there is no, there is no, because again, Kerry, if we're gonna say all dysfunctional mothers come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, then we're giving them an excuse. Oh, if their circumstances were better, they'd be better
mm,
mothers. Oh, it's society's fault. Oh, it's the hand that they were dealt. And we would give them reasons to say, well, it's because of this and it's because of that. And I think that does the victim, the survivor, a disservice.
yeah,
you know so no, I mean, I remember one of the things I looked at in just trying to figure out which direction my research would take. I looked at how mothers are represented in music, and I don't have to
mm,
tell you what the Jamaican answer for that is. Every Jamaican artist have a song about their mother, and their mother walk on water. And I went across the region and I found something similar, and I went over to the United States Boys to Men, Song for Mama. I mean, it's the same. The one
Yeah.
person I found who wrote a song about his mother and her dysfunction was Eminem,
Ah,
right?
imagine
He
that.
wrote about
Yes.
his mother having Munchausen's and all of this and all of that kind of thing. The only
Yeah.
one I found, now, I mean, my research was not about music, so the digging was not extensive. But even
Right.
just looking in a kind of cursory way, yeah, one song spanning several countries, multiple continents, one song that spoke about a negative experience from a child
Yeah.
about their mother. One,
Right.
one. So it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's being dysfunction is everywhere, but the expectation of the automatic love of a mother is everywhere. The
Right.
expectation that the child must look after the parents, even in countries where you're not expected to financially care for them, you're still expected to honor them in a particular way, you know?
Right.
And so yeah, it's right across. It's right across races, right across countries, geographic locations, right across socioeconomic realities. It's right across.
So tell me about the creative outcomes from this research.
Right. Well, in the specific creative project that is attached to the research
Yeah.
is a staged reading of a collection of poems and short stories
Okay.
about, and music about dysfunctional mothering and its
Yeah.
impact, in particular about the impact on the adult children. But a lot of my work speaks for, I know it sounds like a cliche, but being the voice for the voiceless. So a lot of my creative focus has to do with providing a space where people who are not normally listened to will be listened to. And I want to say, you mentioned earlier about my webinar series called Open Your Mouth and Talk.
Right.
Now, Open Your Mouth and Talk is a safe space for women to speak about
Right.
issues. And I did it. The first episode was done when I was in Barbados again, just when COVID hit. So we were getting ready to do the first in-person webinar, well, seminar, and COVID
Yeah.
hit, and we had to pivot and make it a webinar. And
Okay.
I partnered with an association called the National Organization of Women in Barbados. And the president at the time said to me, if you are going to speak on behalf of a group of women who don't often get advocated for, I will partner with you. And the woman she was talking about was upper middle class women.
Okay.
Everybody speaks on behalf of lower class women, lower middle class women. There are so many organizations created specifically for them. But she said to me, what about the women who, by virtue of who their husband is, they cannot speak?
Mhm.
By virtue of who their father is, they cannot speak. By virtue of who their boss is, they cannot speak. Can we create a space for these women, and can we acknowledge the trauma that they are going through as well, even as they wear their mask of success and stand
Right.
proudly beside their husband? And so we started off Open Your Mouth and Talk with that
Yeah.
group of women who are successful, who are influential, whose husbands are professors and doctors and politicians, and but they, because of those things, they cannot speak or they feel silenced.
Hmm.
And so we started off creating a space for those women. My
Right.
performing arts group Tableau um spoke for the voiceless. We spoke about issues of HIV/AIDS. We spoke about issues of um on behalf of prostitutes and abuse victims and people who normally society will not listen to. My
Okay.
production company, Soul Art, looks at issues. So 70 by 7, our first production, dealt with forgiveness.
Yeah.
dealt with forgiveness, and the family being brought to a place where they needed to explore forgiveness. It was at the hands of their pastor. Again, not somebody that you speak out publicly against. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Our follow-up production dealt with men's issues and men feeling insecure and men questioning their identity and men who we don't allow a space to speak in Jamaica.
Right.
Men are not to complain, men are not to cry, men are not to explore hurt and to feel pain and to say, hey, I need a hug. I'm going through it. We don't allow men to do that in Jamaica. So we try to create a space for that. So out of an acknowledgement from my research that these safe spaces need to be created, that these expectations of society, that if you're a politician's wife, you must be okay. That if you're a man, you're supposed to shut up and don't complain. That if you have a mother, you must be lucky. All of these expectations and the exceptions to these expectations need a space that is safe, where they will feel heard and where they will be acknowledged and validated. And so, not just where dysfunctional mothering is concerned, but where all kinds of unusually disenfranchised groups that you don't think about. When you think of a disenfranchised group, you don't think about well to do men.
My question is, which of your US tour dates are you going to invite Eminem?
Listen, Eminem don't know, but I spent most of my adult life declaring myself to be Eminem's wife because I'm fascinated with him as an artist. But when I heard that particular song about his mother, I thought to myself, wow, this man is at the time at the top of his game in
Hmm.
a first world country,
Yeah.
superstar, still
Yeah.
suffering from his mother wound,
Yeah.
you know? And so I thought to myself, if he can have a mother wound, who am I? You
Yeah.
know, hey, listen, if I have a speaking, let me look in the camera. If I have a speaking engagement anywhere in the States about dysfunctional mothering and its impact on adult children and breaking the cycle of abuse because he was determined to break the cycle with his child. If I have a date to speak at a function in America and Eminem wants to come and share his story, I welcome him with open arms. It's a
All
legitimate
right.
story, it's a valid story. He deserves to be heard just like everybody else.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So as you were speaking, I'm in the healthcare space. My interest has been in mental health, not as a practitioner, but as an advocate for mental wellness. What recommendations would you offer to, say, a minister of health, a policy development, or a caregiver in caring for someone who has had this kind of
Yeah.
dysfunctional
Experience.
motherhood
Yeah.
experience? Yeah.
Right. So just I'm going to go off on a little tangent just because I mentioned the Minister of Health, just a little bit.
Okay.
Minister Tufton. Um, I it breaks my heart that to the best of my recollection, my understanding, my knowledge, there has not been a real mental health plan in a post-COVID world. We
Mhm.
went through 2 years of trauma. I'm seeing now, I work in a tertiary institution, and I'm seeing students come to my institution whose entire life in high school was COVID.
Yeah.
And they're expected to be able to function as if COVID did not happen, and there's no plan. I remember there was a scholarship given out from the Ministry of Health
Mhm.
for anybody within the medical profession, right? You can be radiologists, physios. therapists, anywhere within the ministry, the medical or within the health and wellness profession, you could be
Mm,
eligible for a scholarship. And they gave out dozens of scholarships. And I looked through the lists of persons who were awarded scholarships, and there was not one award for anybody within the mental health profession. Not one awardee came from mental health. And I know several persons who applied.
mm,
And I'm like, and I reached out to Minister Tufton and attempted to have a conversation, but that's another story. Um, yeah, you know, this thing about mental health and pretending like it's not happening, pretending like we're not struggling, pretending like people are not dropping down dead from stress. It has to change. There has to be a shift. And to segue back to the original question, acknowledging the reality of these
mhm,
situations is a first step. We have to acknowledge that there are people
mhm.
walking around with pain that is causing them to not be able to function in society. And just because it's not a car, there isn't a cast on their foot or their hand is not in a sling, does not make it any less legitimate. We
Yeah,
cannot just, you know, it really lifts me to see the efforts of the now CEO at Bellevue to bring awareness via her
yeah,
social media platform to mental health issues. But as a country, we have to acknowledge that mental health issues is not just being schizophrenic and being on Ward 21 or in Bellevue. People are walking around with anxiety and panic disorders and stress and depression and suicidal ideation, and we're acting like it doesn't exist. People are walking around unable to function in society, unable to interact with people, unable to navigate criticism and negativity, and we're acting like it's not there. And so we have to acknowledge that these kinds of trauma exist, and we're not just going
yeah,
to acknowledge it with a soundbite on social media under the banner of the Ministry of Health and Wellness or under the banner of the Kiwanis Club of so and so or the Lions Club of so and so. And we talk about it because it's a nice soundbite and then we don't do anything. We have to acknowledge that it exists. We have to sit down and say, how can we address this? So I have to talk to people who know, people who have sense, people who know what they're talking about, not just pull a group of people together, have a subcommittee and tick off on a checklist. Okay, I created a subcommittee and then nothing happens. We have to
yeah,
create spaces where people feel safe to
yeah,
say, I am a upper middle class man in Jamaica, very successful academic professor of this, that, and I am hurting,
yes,
and not be judged and not be laughed at and not be poo-pooed.
yeah,
We have to start by acknowledging that this thing is a real thing. We have to, because we're going to get to the point where we're having more and more and more people murder, suicide, school shootings, you know, slitting of throats and stabbing of, you know, 40 stabs and these things that we look at and say, oh my God, how did somebody get there? They got there because they had issues that went undealt with,
right. Or they
right?
felt that they were not able to speak because another culture in Jamaica is that children are to be seen and not heard,
Exactly.
right? And so,
And when, and Kerry, just think about it. You raise a child to be seen and not heard. You're raising a child who cannot communicate. You're raising a
yes,
child with no agency. You're raising a child who does not feel empowered, and you expect that child to become an adult and all of a sudden feel empowered and all of a sudden have agency and all of a sudden be able to communicate. No, you haven't taught them. You've told them to shut
right,
up and sit
right,
down and be quiet. And then you expect them to function as healthy members of society. It does not work that way. And there's a word for keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. There's a word for that. So we have to
yes,
acknowledge the reality of these traumas. We have to
yeah,
create space, first of all, for people to talk
right,
safely and honestly about the traumas, and then we have to come up with plans.
yes.
It cannot be the same old, same old. I used to hate the phrase, back to normal, or post COVID, they would say, oh, we're back to normal, or and then they would say, oh no, it's not back to normal, it's a new normal. But nobody has acknowledged that there's something new. We have gone back. The education system is the same, we're teaching the same way, we're testing the same way. Nothing has changed.
But the results
We
are
are
showing now.
oper- we're
The results
operating
are showing.
hospitals the same way. We're paying taxes the same way. I mean, nothing has changed. And we expect life to continue, right? We went through Melissa, and you can speak more eloquently about Melissa than me, because where I was, the impact for me personally was not great. Um, but everybody jump on the Melissa bandwagon, and everybody is raising money and sending supplies and all of that, and there's no centralized organization of dissemination of help. I do not understand how so many millions of dollars later, there are still people living on the tarpaulin.
Right? Or no
It
how,
don't make no
no
sense
place
to
to live
me.
at all.
It don't make no sense to me. And you have parishes where food is being dumped because they cannot sell. And then you have parishes where people are starving. What? Where is that centralized organization? Because a category 5 hurricane passed through the country.
Yes.
It's like we don't
So,
understand that that is what happened.
yes, there's a very big divide between what is happening in real people's lives versus parliament. As you said, I
Versus the sound
there
bites. Yes.
yes, there's been no structure, no throughput, no completion of anything. I actually did in March 15 to be exact. I did a live, I did it live called Financing Melissa, where we looked at how much money we can confirm that the government got versus how much was spent. And at that point, it was like they got like 8.8 billion, and they didn't even spend like a half a billion. So not even point 0.8 of the 8.8 was spent. And then when we looked, my neighbors, my mother is living in a house with that still doesn't have windows. It has a roof, it has doors now, but still no windows. It was a building that wasn't finished, but after the hurricane passed through, that was the safest place for her. So, and then we have people who have absolutely nowhere to live. This one gentleman was living in a tent that we gave him, but then when the freak storm came through, the tent went away. And, even when we went back, because we took the 2026 Global Healthcare Conference to Silo, so people can
Yeah.
really see what is happening. Oh, there's just so much an organization that is not well funded can do. But believe me, we've stretched that money, and the people of Silo, they jump together, they volunteer, they help each other and encourage each other the best that they can. But then there comes a point where, okay, we can do this so long, and yes, we can wake up and be encouraged every single day, but we still need a roof over our head. We're still going to need food. And until the trees come back and the fruit starts, coming again, there is a lack of food. And teachers, because teachers explained that the kids, their mental health has changed. The least little thing now actually affects them. So they're more easily aroused by any little thing that because of the trauma that they lived through. So they still need a lot of attention. And so, in closing, what's your hope after
Ah,
this real
my hope.
thoughtful research?
So my hope is that trauma is acknowledged
Yeah.
and treated in the same way that physiological emergencies are treated. That people are empowered to speak their truth,
Yeah.
and that safe spaces are created for those conversations to happen, and that they will be listened to and acted upon by those with the finances, those with the will, those with the power, because we are going to have a society of dysfunctional families. And as I said at the conference, the family is a unit, the building block of the society. If we
Yeah.
don't have healthy families, we will not have healthy communities. If we don't have
Mm,
healthy communities, we will not have healthy parishes, and it goes on and on and on. And
mm,
so we are going to, my hope is that we'll be proactive and not reactive. That we won't wait for the thing to happen where we have to incarcerate someone because
mhm.
we didn't pay attention early enough. That is my hope.
Miss Suzanne Beadle, a woman of many hats, but foremost an advocate and proponent of healing through the spoken words. I want to thank you so much for your time. I know how much it took for you to be here today, so I really want to acknowledge that. And I thank you for
Thank you.
creating this space and the time to speak with us. And if I ever run into Eminem, I'll let him know that he
Please
needs to
do.
check out this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and for facilitating this conversation. I appreciate it so much.
Right. And we're hoping that we'll be able to invite you to, because we do have seminars in the US from time to time. It's not just the conference. So we're hoping to have you speak to our audience at some point where we can once again create the space for the discussion on a mother's love.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much.
All
And
right.
to our audience, we
Take care.
thank you for spending this time with us. Please share this with your families, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. Until then, God bless you.